TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome to the channel, folks. Welcome to a special episode on the channel, Brad. We've got a guest on the channel. We always like it when we have a guest, don't we, bro?
Oh, I tend to love it, Andrew, because it's a bit freer and easier than ranking the tracks. Let's put it that way.
Mate, I don't know about you, but the last couple of weeks, it's I've been a little bit lazy because we've had no homework to do for the shows, mate. You know, these the last couple of shows that we've done, and obviously having Matt on, folks. We'll introduce Matt very soon. So it's not the Brad and Andrew show, but he's there. There he is, he's waving. But no ranking the tracks here, bro. It's a little bit different for the channel, isn't it?
I must admit, I've slipped into a bit of a lazy mode when it comes to the show, because I'm like, well, I don't really need to prepare anything anymore, so just rock up and sit here and try and look as pretty as you, Andrew. You know?
Oh my lord! Good. Yeah, mate, you can stay on the show. Well done. You can come back. Thank you for that comment. Well, there's a couple of things, obviously, that we're going to talk about. Obviously, we've got a special guest, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about what he's up to and where he's come from. But we can't, obviously, Brad, do anything without recognising the servicemen and women who fought for Australia and New Zealand over the last two wars and other wars in between and since. So we dedicate this show to their memory, and we dedicate this show to the serving men and women in the New Zealand and Australian Armed Forces. Thank you for your service, everybody.
Yes. Oh, 100%, Andrew. I attended dawn service with my son this year down at a local RSL and Civic Hall. So there was a march and parade, and it was really refreshing to see how many people turned out and braved the chilly weather and did the dawn service. So yeah, well done, everyone.
Well done to you and your boy.
Yeah, happy Anzac Day. Well, he was hell bent on doing it, Andrew. We've been doing it for a few years, including during lockdowns. We used to do it at the end of our driveway. You know, burn the candles and all that stuff. So he's a big Anzac Day supporter, which is great. You know, young guy, 17. You know, wants to do it. So 100%. I encourage everyone to do it. Keep the tradition going.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that we take for granted sometimes in this world is the ability to just do little things like this, get onto YouTube, you know. So it's an activity that a lot of people in the world can't enjoy. So, you know, right. Matt, Brad, and Andrew, we can, you know. So it's just those little things that sometimes you forget because there's you know, millions of other people who can't.
Yeah, it's easy to take it for granted. So yeah, 100%. It's good to identify that, and it's one of the most important days here in Australia on the calendar.
Absolutely, 100%. Now I understand that you caught up with the Rock Professor during the week.
I did, Andrew. I did. He did a bit of a shout out to me through the week, like a bit of a message, and said he'd love to have a chat. So I thought, oh well, that's great. So I jumped at the opportunity, Andrew, and we had a little video call. He's in good spirits. He's on the mend. Yeah, so it's great to see the Rock Professor on screen again, and you know, we can't wait for him to come back, Andrew. But it was just a good opportunity to have a chat, and I think we killed a little bit of time. It flew past. It was like these shows; it went so quick. You know, we're chatting for a fair while, and it went so quick, and it got past my bedtime. I said, mate, I've got to go to bed, mate. Good night. And
Well, he sent me a
yeah.
message after I had a chat with him. He said, "Oh, you and I only chatted for 20 minutes. Brad and I chatted for 2.5 hours." I said, "Oh, okay."
Well, no. Yeah, no, it was good to catch up with the Rock Professor, and yeah, we do miss him on the show, and we look forward to seeing him on, Andrew.
Yeah, he may pop on. He said that he'd definitely be watching the replay because he was quite interested to hear about Matt and what Matt is doing. Matt, he checked out your channel. He was impressed with your videos on your channel. So I suppose it's probably a good opportunity, Brad, for you and I to properly introduce our guest, Matt, from
Yeah.
Prague, Matt, and you and I were talking in the green room. One of the great things, Brad, about social media is that when you key in on YouTube, Cream, Jack Bruce, and E.B. Gibson bass guitars, videos come up on your feed. So when I was keying that in, Jack Bruce, Cream videos, and E.B. basses, Matt's channel came up. Not with 1 or 2 videos, bro, but half a dozen videos.
Well, I did my homework and checked out Matt's channel, and before we introduce Matt, I've just got to say, yeah, I went down the rabbit hole and I started watching all these songs, and I'm thinking, geez, I might have to buy a bass. I've got a bass, but I might have to buy an SG bass. So yeah. Now I went down a rabbit hole. But Andrew, without further ado, why don't you introduce Matt properly to everyone who's here today and for the people watching later?
Awesome. So Matt, we've done enough talking. As I said to you in the green room, Brad and I do a little bit of talking at the beginning of the videos, and then we're going to hand it over to you. So please, Matt, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, your music, your channel, and what inspires you.
Of course, man. So my name is Matt. Real name Mateusz, but Matt is easier to pronounce. I'm from the Czech Republic, and I'm a programmer by trade and a musician.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Oh, fantastic. So obviously, one of the big things about our channel is the British Electric Blues scene, and Cream being prime examples of that, Brad. How did you get into Cream, Matt? Because I'm looking at you. You're a young fellow. You're as young as Matt, as Brad. So you young guys. I'm fascinated how young guys get caught up into this great music, Matt.
Well, it's kind of been a dive down the rabbit hole, really. I've always been interested in music since as early as I began forming memories, so maybe 2 years old. I would sit in front of the stereo, playing whatever CDs I found in my parents' stash, and just listening and sitting there on the floor and watching the seconds counter tick up. So my tastes have evolved greatly over the years, but first discovered Cream, well, it must have been way long ago, because when I ran across Sunshine of Your Love again when I was a teen, maybe I was 13 or 14, I was like, oh yeah, I know this from somewhere, right? But it's a late 60s song, and you don't exactly come across those that often in popular media anymore, so I couldn't tell you where I heard it for the first time, but I was sold. And later on, when I decided to jump down that rabbit hole, and I figured, hey, I really like the sound of this song. I want to see if there's more like it. So I listened to the entire Disraeli Gears album, and that was it. I was completely hooked. There's nothing else like it, really.
Similar to all of us, Matt, I think we've all gone down the rabbit hole of Cream and Jack Bruce, Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, as well as that whole era of music. Obviously, one of the questions I've got for you, Matt, is Torch Music. Is there a that's your YouTube channel? So
Yeah.
Andrew's going to obviously share a link to your channel so people can check you out after our show. But why Torch Music 27? Like, what is that a band name that you're in, or is that something that you wanted to promote, or is it just a cool name that you went with?
Oh, it doesn't mean anything in particular. I decided for some reason that I like the way the word torch sounds.
Yeah,
So
cool.
I've sort of been using that as a handle around some places, and
Yeah.
slap music on top of that, slap 27 on top of that. I'm sure you know what that means. And
Sure.
there it was.
Beautiful. Oh, this is a pretty basic question off the bat, but yeah, I was hoping that you might have had a band called Torch, because I think that's a really cool name for a band.
I might someday.
Yeah.
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 I think one of the great things, though, obviously, is the power behind that music of Disraeli Gears, isn't it, guys? We can all agree to that. And Matt, we've done lots of shows on this channel talking about that album and the pathways that it opened up for other bands to follow and mimic. Back in the late 60s, and even to this day still, it's a hugely influential album. So getting back to the album, you're a young guy, you picked up that album. How did you get to the bass? Were you a guitar player and go to the bass, or were you just solely the bass man?
Yeah, I was originally a guitar player. When I first started becoming really aware of what music was about, the composition, the individual instruments, that was when I was about 14, and I got infatuated with AC/DC, later on Black Sabbath, and particularly the guitarists. I wanted to be like Angus Young. I wanted to be that crazy guy who goes on stage and just pops off. I wanted to be like Tony Iommi, playing those evil riffs and those crazy trilling solos. And I persuaded my parents to buy me an electric guitar for Christmas. And SG, of course, I still have it here. I can show you later. And I began learning, but it turns out I never went anywhere. I felt like my fingers were just too tubby. I couldn't put chords together. I didn't have enough dexterity on the fingerboard. But I spent about 7 years trying to learn guitar, and I was worthless. But just before I decided to, give up forever, I figured, hey, maybe bass is more my jam, because I noticed that a lot of the stuff that I really liked when I listened to music and I tried to reproduce it with my guitar, it felt like it wasn't really the guitar sounds that I was trying to make. It felt like it might have been something else. So I was like, let's try the bass. 'Cause there had been some songs at that time where I really enjoyed the bass sounds, and I wanted to give that a try anyway. So I went to a music store, took a bass in my hands, and tried to play just finger style, just two hands, no pick. And I figured, this is pretty fun. This might work out. So at that time, that was 3 years ago. So I was 22 or 23. I had a job. I was able to buy a bass, a small combo, and I began learning bass all over again with some of the theory stuff that I'd already picked up on guitar. It honestly came together pretty quickly, and it just clicked. I was finally able to make music, and well enough to eventually join a band, and went from there.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. What a journey.
Yeah, I gotta admit, it was a massive relief when I realized. So it's not a me problem, It's not that I have two left hands. I can actually, do something when it's the right instrument.
Well, a
Wow.
lot of us have read and seen a lot of biographies over the years, haven't we, Brad? Where bass players have talked about their transition, from guitar players to bass players. And let's be fair, all the great bass players have all started out being guitar players, haven't they, Brad? And they'll say evolved to a higher life form as a bass player because they're not shy. But one of the great things about that bass, playing the bass, and it's one of the reasons why I love it. And I know, Brad, you've got a bass and you're a bass player too, is that when you want to play the bass and you're playing the bass, it actually forces you, doesn't it, Matt, to sit back and listen to what everybody else is doing around you too, you know? So you know, you're actually driving what's happening with the band.
Yeah. I would say from a certain perspective, it's more of a lead instrument than the guitar, because when you change what you're playing, everyone else has no choice but to go along with you. You're forming if you find the term, the baseline that everybody else has to go off of. So you're kind of in control in a way that, you know, the other instruments such as lead guitar oftentimes don't find themselves in.
Well,
Interesting.
a classic example of that, I'm doing some preparation for the show next week, guys, and I was watching Red House live, and Jimmy's doing the intro on Red House, and then Noel Redding on the bass, he doesn't hit the E, he hits the A. And so Jimmy, and if you watch Jimmy's hands, because he's getting ready to go into that opening riff, and then he moves up because because he's such a great musician, he can hear, oh, Noel's hit an A, so I've got to play it an A.
Exactly.
Now, yeah, but Brad, if that was you, you'd turn around and kick. You say, "Hey, bass player, give him a good."
I'd get the stick out, Andrew. Whack.
I would. but he didn't. He was so good. He could hear that note wasn't an E. It was and B. So yeah, that's a classic example, Matt, of what you're saying. The bass player. Yeah. You got to follow what the bass is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that song is a great example. It's been one of my favorites from Hendrix for a while because for blues, it's got a lot of depth. I think I tried to play it really early on when I was beginning bass, and I had no chance for a Hendrix and Noel Redding song. It's got complexity. It sounds great.
Yeah, well, the bass player does tend to lead the charge when it comes to a trio, especially because like a situation like Cream, for example, or Hendrix, as we're talking about, the bass player is pretty much the machine. I mean, I've always said that you're only as good as your drummer and bass player as a guitar player or a guitarist singer. So we lean quite heavily on you bass players, Matt.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of bands with that sort of dynamic. I mean, I'm not going to make it any secret that the power trio is my favorite band format.
Yeah,
that's how the band I'm currently playing in works. It's how the other band I was playing in ended up working, and I think it gives everyone a bit of extra freedom that true players who do it from the heart tend to really appreciate.
Yeah,
I think it's the key to why it ends up feeling so magical. It's got that spark.
Yeah, fantastic. Before we fire some more questions at you, Matt, I'm just going to do a quick shout out. We've got some people here in the chat live watching and hanging out with us. So we've got Steve Cooper, who's just said some nice things about the channel. Welcome, Steve, to our channel. Yeah. Appreciate the kind words. We've got Nelson Rodriguez, a very, very good friend of the channel, joining us. The Rock Professor is here. Alan Toll, another great friend of the channel. Good to see you, Alan. Thanks for joining us. We had Jonas Halberg. We've got Jonas Halberg in here. Good to see you, bro. And I think that is everybody here that's hanging out with us live. If you guys in the chat have any questions for Matt, please put them through and we'll ask on your behalf. And if you're watching live, if you're watching on a replay, this video, and if you've got any questions for Matt, ask them here in the comments, and I'm sure Matt over the next couple of days will come back and answer them for you, and we'll have, as Brad said, links to his channel. And we urge you In fact, when they're talking soon, I'll put his channel links in the chat, and I'll get you now, people, while you're watching, to go and subscribe to him. Let's get his channel over 1,000.
Yeah.
And we can do that. So Matt, obviously, you decided that you're going to play the bass. Most bass players will either pick up a P bass or a jazz bass as an average. That would be a safe bet, Brad, wouldn't it? It'll be a jazz or a P bass. But you've decided to run with a short scale EB bass. Tell us why.
Well, my first bass was an Ibanez SR300. Still have that one. It's good for when I want to try playing slap. I've never been much into that, but I think it's a skill that I eventually want to develop, so I still keep it around. You can kind of do every sound. But after that, that's when I really started to specialize from just playing whatever bass songs that I felt like I wanted to play, stuff from the 80s with relatively simple bass lines, but they felt I felt like they added a lot of emotion to the songs and some funk. It's the kind of stuff I was originally interested in playing, stuff like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then I discovered that Cream and similar bands from the 60s and 70s that I've been familiar with for a while by then actually have really fascinating bass parts. Cream in particular. And I did my research, looked at some videos, and was like, oh yeah, it's because Jack is playing this bass that's got this really particular pickup configuration and this short scale, and it looks awesome. And I think I said already that my first guitar was an SG guitar, because that's what Angus Young and Tony Iommi had. And it made perfect sense to me that I should be playing an SG bass as well. So I had been in my first band for a couple months by then, and I asked the band leader and guitarist, hey, what if I get this Epiphone EBO? It's this cheap SG bass, and it's in all these bands that I'm really inspired by. And I was like, yeah, sure, get it. I think it's gonna be cool. So I got it. I was pretty impressed. I still have that one.
Sure.
It's in our rehearsal room right now. We modded it with a pickup that's more like the original EB pickups from the 60s with really high output. And it's a beast, man. That thing formed a lot of what my playing is today. I learned on that thing.
Wow. Yeah, I checked out some of your videos, Matt, and there's quite a few there, which was a pleasure to see. But I did notice you were playing the Epiphone in a couple of videos there. Were they earlier videos? Were they before you got the Gibson, or do you still use the Epiphone on some of your videos as well?
Yeah, that was in the earlier videos. Since I got the Gibson, I have not released one video where I wasn't playing the Gibson. And I kind of felt like that might happen. And I think I did say at some point in one of my video descriptions that I still like the Epiphone. It can do a sort of different sound, because the pickup does sound different than the Gibson pickup. It might just be the adjustment of it. But maybe I'll bring it back, for some song where that sound works better. I haven't done it yet. I'm still tempted to say that I might do it at some point, but I would have to bring it home, and a bit too lazy.
Have you got your bass there handy?
Yeah. I do.
If we present you, can you show us your bass? I'd be keen to see it.
Of course. Here it is. The Gibson EB2. So I can see the headstock over here.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
It's a 71 slot head.
So do you use flats or rounds on there?
I use flats, which is what Jack used and what Andy Fraser and many of the other classics that I'm really inspired by used.
Andy Fraser.
Yeah. These flats that I've got on right now are Rotosounds.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of labellas, but I don't have any at the moment. I have an order placed for their low tension short scale flats, which I've been told are actually made to order and that they're going to be shipped in about a couple months. So I'll be waiting for a while, but I think it's going to be worth it.
Can you let me know when you've got them? Flick me a message and let me know what you think of them, because if they are the bee's knees, I'll get a set. But I've read about them too, and I'd be interested to obviously hear what you have to say, through your videos. But yeah, flick me a message, mate. I'll be intrigued because we all know, don't we, guys? We're all musicians and guitar players here. The brands of guitar strings, the gauges, Brad, whether they're coated or not, make a huge difference to not only the tone, but the way that, the instrument feels under your hands, Brad.
Yeah, 100%. Matt, there is there's a comment here in the chat from a good friend Jonas Halberg, and he's asked what your thoughts are on Andy Fraser.
Well, Andy Fraser is one of the most unique bassists whom I know. In the Free catalog, I feel like one of their magical abilities as a band is to sound really good when they're not playing. They have a really minimalist style with, you listen to them and not one note feels like it could be removed from the song. It just changed the feeling completely. He's a really economical bass player. I think I read in an interview with him once that he likes to shape the bass lines to back up the vocals, to back up Paul Rodgers' singing as best as he can, which I guess I'm not at the level yet to really be able to observe that. But what he does play seems to be just completely out there, completely unique style, really admirable. And of course, he made excellent use of the bridge pickup on the EB bass.
Yeah, one of the great things about Andy Fraser is that ability where he didn't push that bass anywhere near, the level that other bass players were doing around that same time. If you look at All Right Now, for example, guys, as a classic example, half the song there's no bass. It's not until the chorus. And you're right, Matt. One of the great things about his bass playing is that he accompanies the vocalist, and that's Brad because he wrote the song. So while he's writing the song, he's got an idea, hasn't he, of what his bass is going to be doing, as opposed to, I think, writers presenting the final touch to a bass player and saying, "Hey, can you put your bass riff on?" Makes sense, do you think?
Yeah, that's right. And another thing is that he was writing all these songs when he was just a teenager. Only by, I think, 1970 with Fire and Water, he was 18 at the time. So their earlier albums, he was writing all those amazing riffs, all those harmonies, all that good stuff, and he was a minor at the time. He was 16 or 17. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. He was 16 when he joined that band. That's right. I forget that. Yeah.
Fascinating, isn't it? Yeah. Unbelievable.
There's another question in the chat from Steve. And that's one of the questions that I had too here. Obviously, being a bass player, you'd be pretty fussy with the amp situation you're using. He's asking, do you use an Ampeg or is it a Mark bass for your amp?
I've gone through a bit of a history of amps that I've tried and put away and tried different ones. At home, it hasn't really changed so much. I had a Vox Stomplab multi-effects pedal, and which can actually do a surprisingly good Jack Bruce kind of sound. Even though it's very digital sounding and kind of very compressed, it sort of still lands in the ballpark, which is impressive. Right now, I've got a new setup going with an EHX bass Metaphors and an EBS compressor.
Yep.
But in the band, in the rehearsal room, I did have a Mark-Bass TA501 amp for a time, which I used together with an overdrive pedal. And then David, our guitarist, who's also a good electrician, it's not the right word, but he built me a 50-watt bass plexi clone, which is what I use now.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
that's the bee's knees. You gotta have a Marshall
Wow.
just cranked up.
Yes, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, 100%. I'm intrigued about your thoughts on digital, because I've been using this Zoom digital multi effects, and it's got amp modelers, bass amp modelers on it for about a year, and I find it really, really good. The different amp models, good reproductions of the proper amps. And I have a Rumble 100 here, which you plug in, and I'm a fan of digital. I think digital certainly has, Brad and Matt, certainly has its place.
Yeah, it sure does. I think the main problem with trying to play this sort of music using digital gear is that no one tries to make digital equipment that can model a Marshall bass sound.
Correct.
It's just not everybody try. There's thousands of boxes that you can get to get yourself a really good model of an Ampeg or a Mark bass or an Aguilar or any of these more modern sounding brands that kind of focus on bass players who do slap, funk, that kind of stuff. You have infinite options with that sort of stuff. But if you want to sound like Jack playing an angry bass through a really heavily overdriven tube amp, your options are really limited. You've got Ampeg and Ampeg.
I've just got a comment here from one of our friends, a very dear friend of the channel, saying that he's going to block me for saying I like digital. Let me just qualify that with a couple of comments. It has its role to play. If you're just jamming at home, bro, digital is fantastic. But I have to agree with what Matt said, though. If you've got a guitar player and a set of drums, if you're jamming, or Brad doing a gig and you're getting ready for a gig, mate, you got to have the real stuff, don't you? Yeah.
I've been in a band that went full digital even on stage, and when you handle it correctly, it can work out pretty well. I mean, you've got a good situation with in-ear monitors. It's easy to hook that up, and overall, it's pretty easy to get the levels correctly as opposed to with acoustic gear.
Yeah.
But you got to fiddle with it. It's not something that comes to you for free. You've got to put in the work and dial it in exactly right.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. I always find even more so with guitar rigs, you've got to really focus on putting the time in to polish them up and get them sounding good. I've found with bass plugins digitally and things like that, they seem to be a little bit better. But I guess with bass guitar, you're working with a different frequency to wider frequency paths. So the digital might work better with bass, I'm thinking, than guitar. But guitar is getting a lot better, like the digital processing and stuff like that. It seems to be getting better and better, very drastically quick, now. But do you find that like digital bass stuff tends to be? I mean, do you still dabble? First question: do you still dabble playing a bit of guitar, or you just totally stopped now?
I don't really have a playable guitar at the moment, so you could say that I've stopped. The SG that I had as my first guitar is not in great shape. Haven't changed the strings on it in years, probably 5 years.
Wow.
So I lent it to my brother once, and he knocked it over, and one of the tuners is broken. Stuff happens. I had a Stratocaster that I bought in 2019 or 2020. Had it for a couple of years. Was my main guitar. That was right before I started playing bass. I kind of got fed up with it. I wanted to recoup some of the money that I spent on my first bass, so I sold it. I haven't really played guitar since then.
Fair enough. Do you find that like digital bass stuff sounds better than digital guitar? That's my point before. I always found when I'm recording bass, for example, when I'm recording demos or recording stuff, I can get a pretty quickly. I can get a decent bass sound out of plugins, but with guitar, you've really got to work at it.
Well, I think the difference is that with guitar, a lot of people want a very specific, overdriven sound or effects-laden sound. Whereas with bass, I mean, I'm sort of the exception to this, but most bassists, I figure, want a mostly clean tone.
Yeah.
Very well articulated with an even sort of frequency spectrum, or maybe even like scooped, a lot of detail in the highs and very deep bass. And digital can do that pretty well. Where it has trouble is mimicking the way that, a tube amp would, overdrive the specific frequencies of a specific bass while keeping it sounding good. The solid state and digital clipping just is never going to sound the same. And if you don't try to dip into that, then it produces very good results. So I think that's why bassists commonly use digital gear and aren't really hampered by it in any way. Plus, you get sound engineers asking bassists, but not guitarists, to plug directly into the DI, because they just figure that, this bass player probably just wants to play clean. And if he doesn't, he's going to stomp on a pedal and get that done that way.
Yeah.
Sure.
Guitar is
And
going to have a big tube amp for distortion, and he's going to want it mic'd in a specific way to pick up the juice from the overdrive just right.
And if you look at what Jack Bruce was doing over the years too, when he left Cream, he got cleaner and cleaner and cleaner with his tones. Not only on the recordings, guys, but also when he was playing live. There was definitely a concerted effort there on his behalf. And you go and listen to the Cream reunion tour in 2005. Listen to what he's playing. It sounds really good. There's a it's completely different on the end of the scale compared to what he was doing with Disraeli Gears and Live Cream. There's a couple of questions here. Jonas is asking the great bass player question. Motown, James Jamerson. Obviously, he has influence, I'm going to assume, Matt, on your playing.
Not that much, actually. I've never really come into much contact with Motown. And I've listened to it, of course, and I've listened to some showcases of why Jamerson is what people say he is. And, he is a very good player, but it's never been exactly my type of genre, or I guess I haven't found the time to really dive deep into it. So I'm sure that's something that still lies in my future. I'm the kind of person who really gets into a specific type of music, and I just listen to it on repeat for days on end, I can be a little
no
bit
apologies. No apologies for that. And from my perspective, I think James Jamerson came into my mind, Brad, when we were listening to the Beatles, because we're huge Beatles fans here. And Paul McCartney would often talk about James Jamerson being one of the huge influences on his sound, his tone, especially on the back end of the Beatles. So that's what kind of pushed me, Brad, to go and check out, what he was doing. So, if you get a chance, you won't be disappointed. They used to call him the Hook, didn't? Because he just used one finger.
Yeah, I've heard that. I think all these classic players from the 50s and 60s and onward, they all sort of inspired each other. So just by virtue of being strongly inspired by Jack Bruce, I'm sure I've picked up unwittingly a lot of stuff that Jamerson would have done.
Yeah.
Jack also did have the same habit of playing with just one finger. I think that comes from being classically trained, learning to play the upright bass before you switch to bass guitar, which I'm pretty sure is what James also went through.
Yeah, 100%. And I like the example that you're using there of Jack Bruce again, because you know a lot of the bass players around that time were playing root notes as an example, and you know Jack Bruce realized early on that he was going to take the bass and use the bass as a lead instrument. And I think probably if we look back, I don't think anybody up until Jack Bruce was doing that, guys, using the bass deliberately as a lead instrument. So, you know, hats off to Jack Bruce, because you go and listen to some of those live recordings. It's just phenomenal what he's doing.
Oh, insane.
Yeah, it took me a while to get into the live recordings because I've never figured myself to really enjoy that sort of stuff. I like the polish and the conciseness of most bands' studio work, but with Cream, it was inevitable that I would find the magic in what they did live, because it's incredible, the interplay, the dynamics of it. It's amazing, really. It's something that I've always wanted to be able to do myself as a bass player in a band, and I've got my work cut out for me. I gotta say, it's they're big shoes to fill.
Matt, in your current band, what material are you sort of playing? Are you playing a lot of Cream and covers like that, or are you doing your own music, or what is it that you're doing out there on stage?
With my band called Call a Shoot, we play only original material. We've been recently sort of playing with the idea of doing some covers. One name that's popped up has been The Doors.
Wow.
Thinking of songs like The Spy or Crystal Ship, but so far we haven't done any of that, so it's just our own stuff. We're sort of transitioning from, well, for context, the band was formed 3 years ago, and back then I was new to the bass, and we have a great drummer who was completely new to the drums, and she was learning from scratch. And so we kind of had to keep it basic at the start. So we came up with a few songs that weren't that demanding, but, you know, had room for improvement and room for improvisation and, you know, adding more stuff onto that. And recently we've been sort of thinking and working to transition into more of a jam band where we just lean into the improv more than that.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah, there's a comment here from Nelson about Squier basses, and if you go and check out, there's a lot of bass channels which rate the classic vibe bass guitars. In fact, the classic vibe Squier classic vibe guitar range, it's pretty good. You're not going to be disappointed. And that's one of the great things about the bass guitar, from my perspective. If it's set up right, if you've got a good set of strings, and you know, adjust the action, because most bass guitars, from my experience, Brad and Matt, off the shelf, the action's just far too high, you know. And it's a myth, I think, that bass players like high actions, because, you know, why have your fingers do more work, Matt, than what they need to do?
I think we may have.
Are we back?
Matt. Yes.
Might have been something on my end. Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, we're just talking about a good bass setup, you know, the action, you know, if you've got a bass that needs to be set up, adjust the action, you know, and that's always going to be a good thing for a bass.
I can attest to that. I've always been trying to do the setup myself, up until the point where I got the EB and I wanted to change the strings on it. But it's got this, if you can see this, the Gibson 2-point bridge, also known as the Tilt-O-Matic. which
Yes.
is, I have to be honest, this is easily the worst part about this bass. People say that the 2-point bridge is better than the later 3-point, which is really unpopular. Just Google Gibson 3-point bridge and you'll see so many people complaining about it. This thing is worse. This thing is incomparably worse because it's so unintuitive the way you set it up. Basically, you control the saddle height by adjusting how much it's able to tilt under the tension of the strings, which
Yeah.
seems really stupid as a concept, and it's really stupid when you realize that it doesn't really work in practice. So I took it to a luthier to do it for me, and
Yeah.
I also got it refretted with stainless steel frets, so those are going to outlive me now. So
Oh,
the
fantastic.
frets on it were very worn down, and yeah, some of the notes it had started to develop some dead spots in the neck. So I had to do that, but it plays like a dream since then.
100%. I've had a couple of guitars over the years where I've refretted them. My Clapton Strat and a Greco Les Paul recently, and I have to tell you guys, having a it's like a new guitar.
I could tell you the moment I got it home, it just suddenly felt like it was playing itself, completely effortless. It was amazing.
Good night, Steve.
Part of it is definitely because these strings are so thin, it's like spaghetti. That's part of the reason I want them replaced now, because it feels like they kind of work as training wheels. They let you play incredibly complicated stuff with absolute ease, but then you want to really dig into it and articulate better, and you find out that them being so stretchy is kind of a limitation, because it limits how hard you can hit them while still being able to play quickly.
Sure. How high is your back pickup from? Is it quite close to the strings on your back pickup?
It is close, but I try to keep something of a distance because I like to pluck over the bridge, and I hate the feeling when my fingers kind of hit the pickup underneath. It's kind of distracting, so I need there to be some sort of distance. Also, the pickup is really high, so if you put it too close to the strings, then it just has way too much output and distorts too much.
Yeah, I lifted my back pickup so it's quite high because I like to have my fingers resting, on the pickup, because I'm not a hard plucker, Brad.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
I'm glad you said pluck.
Yeah. I'm a soft plucker, but I like the idea of having the fingers over the on the actual pickup, and I got that tip from who was the bass player that used to play with David Lee Roth?
Billy Sheehan.
Billy Sheehan, yeah. Billy Sheehan suggested if you do that, and again, turn your volume down because you're going to have it up quite high, and that just gives you the ability to then just have a little bit more control over what your fingers are doing. But we're all different, we're all different. But I certainly like having that feeling of my fingers on something. And I've got the dreaded 3-point bridge that Matt was talking about. But if you've got the 3-point bridge and you want to make it a lot better, you just get a piece of timber and slot a piece of timber between the bridge and the top of your bass, and the tonal difference, because there's no gap between them, it's a complete connection, is remarkable.
Wow.
Yeah, the 3-point really isn't as bad as they say. There's just a couple ground rules that you gotta familiarize yourself with before you change strings. Never tip it over, because then the saddle pieces are just gonna fall out.
I know that.
Basic stuff. Yeah, you live with the bass for a while and you learn it. After that, it's manageable for real.
Yeah. I did that. I took the strings off and I went to give it a bit of a wipe and sort of tilted it up, and and as Matt said, the 4 saddles fall out, Brad, and it's like, oh no. So you know, a 10-minute job turned into a 2-hour job, Brad.
Yeah, yeah. I can understand. I'm glad I don't have to go through that, gentlemen.
There's a question here. As I mentioned, underutilization, and I brought Alex Lifeson, but let's talk about underrated duels. Robbie Krieger, listening to Strange Days. He's because he doesn't use a pick. He's just finger plucking, isn't it? Yeah. It's just a great guitar player. So yeah, you've played in a duels tribute band. Brad, how were you playing the guitar? Were you using a pick or were you finger picking?
No, I was singing, Andrew, so I didn't play guitar in that band at all.
Oh,
but the guitarist used to alternate between a pick and fingers. He was predominantly more a pick player, but you know, he was trying to play as authentic as possible, to sound like Robbie. So he did use his fingers, increasingly increase the amount of finger usage, I should say, throughout the time I was in the band. It started to get more and more. So finger picking like Robbie Krieger is something that you know, that's the nylon acoustic Spanish style or classical style playing, and I've always thought that would lead to a very good bass player as well. Someone to go from that to playing bass would be a smooth transition, other than the obvious being a bigger neck and different scale and thicker strings. But yeah, to answer your question, Andrew, yeah, no, I was the singer, and I didn't have to try and emulate that, thank God. Yeah.
Well, you that hard enough job trying to pull off some Jim Morrison riffs, bro, with those vocals, bro.
Oh, look, it's certainly a challenge, but one of my favorite singers. So what do? You're gonna, you know, I knew the stuff without even practicing it in the back of my head. So yeah. It's one of those. There's some stuff floating around on YouTube, you know, of that. So if people are interested, go and check it out. Doors of Perception, Australia.
We might find some of those videos, folks, and we might do a show on that. I'm guaranteed that we will. We'll be doing a show on that. Talking about vocals, Matt, in your band, do you sing at all?
I did at one point. I did some backing vocals on a couple of our songs. It didn't go too well at the gigs where I tried to do it, because we didn't have the monitor set up right and I couldn't hear myself. So I ended up just sort of screeching during the choruses and ruining our recordings. But I've been sort of working to improve it. Actually, since I have a bit more free time now, I was considering getting singing lessons. So
Good.
It's something that I want to pursue. I think it would be cool if we could have a sort of cream-like dynamic where both the guitar player and the bass player can sing and alternate or harmonize depending on the circumstance.
I don't know anybody that's never regretted taking singing lessons, Brad.
Yeah, Matt, I have to say it would be nothing but a bonus for you to pick up singing lessons and you know, work on singing and playing at the same time, because a bass player that can sing is a sought after tool for a band.
Yeah, I've been learning that, practicing that for a while, actually. Singing and playing Cream songs, you know, just the full Jack Bruce package. I haven't made any videos of that, and I don't think I will for a while, but I've been trying.
Well, we look forward to seeing them. I mean, you know, possibly look at doing some sort of Cream tribute band later in the, you know, down the track. If you could get it together, that would be very cool.
Well, I think if I ever get into another cover band that's specifically dedicated to making covers, I'm not talking just, you know, a couple picks amongst an original repertoire, then it would have to be a Cream tribute band. I've tried playing different covers before, and didn't really work out in the end as I wanted. Give me a some stage time, which was really useful for me. But I've mainly got a connection with Cream songs because you can embellish them, you can work on them. You know, Cream themselves never play their songs the same way twice, and it's part of where the appeal is for me. And of course, filling the role of Jack as the singer and the bassist is incredible. Like when you nail it and you get it right, the feeling is incomparable to anything else, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the great things about a tribute band too, and especially being in Europe, because I follow a few tribute bands, you know, there's always people interested in what you have to play. You can travel now. You know, you're based in Prague. You can by the end of the afternoon you've traveled past or in 2 countries, Matt. You know, so you know there's always going to be some interest in a classic rock act, Brad. There's always going to be interest, in my opinion.
I think the appeal for a classic rock band these days is becoming more and more so because we're losing a lot of them. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's something to look at the future, Matt, and give that a red hot go, because I think that would be very cool. Good challenge.
Yeah, I think I can see something like that in my future. And you're right about what you said about them slowly dropping out. It's really sad to watch, but time goes on. It's inevitable, and the best we can do is keep the classics going in our hearts, and keep the music playing. Not just playing recording off Spotify, but trying to reproduce it yourself, and following on with maybe embellishing it with a bit of your own sort of flavor. That's part of what drives me as a musician, is just being able to do that, keep it going.
And that's what inspired me when I watched your channel. That's what we do on our channel here. We talk about music a lot, and that kind of music in particular. And when I saw your video, we're clearly a young guy embracing this music with a passion and hitting it, nailing it. All your videos are fantastic. So, well done. And I, being a fan of the music, it's always inspiring to watch other people, have a lot of these videos celebrating the music that we talk about weekly, Brad.
Yeah, 100%. And it's actually for you, Andrew, doing these shows and watching something like Matt's channel would be totally inspirational with having your bass behind you there to pick up and to jam along with. I'm sure. Have you? I'm sure you've
I wish
done that.
I wish I was half as good as Matt. If I was as good as Matt in 2.5 years of playing the bass, I have to tell you, Matt, just imagine where you'll be in another 2.5 years as a bass player. It's phenomenal where you can be as a bass player. It's scary.
Further down this same road, I hope.
Well, keep in touch with us, obviously, and we're going to do everything that we can. When this show ends, I'm going to put your channel on our community page, and every time Brad and I and the Rock Professor, we do a show live, we ask people to go to our community page, and I'll share your channel on our social medias. One of the reasons why we have a YouTube channel here with the members following us is because we've got Facebook groups as well, Matt, and we share a lot of our videos on there as well, and there's a good crossover. So we'll do that with your channel, and if there's anything that you've got in the future that you want to promote, any musical project that you've got, you can take advantage of our channel here on the 5150 show. All you'll have to do is just flick us a message, and you've got a permanent invitation to come on and talk about any EP gigs or tours that you might want to do, that's the least we can do. And we'd look forward, and it'll be an honor for us to do that for you, Matt. Wouldn't it, Brad?
100%. Be awesome.
Thanks, guys. You're way too kind. Yeah, I've seen what you got going on. It's really, really nice. And I, as a classic rock fan, really appreciate what you guys are doing. I've checked out some of your videos on your channel. I've seen the Facebook groups. It's just a collection of great stuff. It's like when you walk into a museum where they're doing an expo, and stuff that you're passionate about. You're always going to be excited about it. I wish you all the best.
Well, thank you. And that's exactly what our channel's about. It's a celebration, isn't it? It's about doing our little bit. I met Brad on a Philip Sayce live stream, and Philip Sayce is heavily influenced by Jimi Hendrix, and Stevie Ray Vaughan. And Brad and I were having this sort of conversation about Jimi Hendrix, I think, on this Philip Sayce live stream. It's like, oh, okay, and it's really interesting when you meet people that admire and love that music as much as you do. Because Cream, for me, and Jack Bruce was always the phenomenal talent. And it was a sad day when he passed away, but I'm so glad, Matt, they did that reunion tour in 2005. I just think, as a recording and as a video package, I'm just so glad that they did it.
Yeah, that was really something special. It rarely ever happens that a band would come together after such a long time, especially with the famous strains in their personal relationships, to pull off something like that. It's truly incredible. Probably unique in history, actually, which is why it's still such an important gig event in musical history to have occurred.
I couldn't have put it much better myself.
That was very, very, very well put, Matt. Very well.
I've read Jack's biography. I've got it here in my bookshelf, and to anyone listening to this, I wholeheartedly recommend that you get that book and you read it, because it's amazing. One of the bestest put biographies of any musician, actually, if you're also a musician, because they include a lot of information about his playing, his technique, his thoughts, his feelings about the playing, about the band, about the people, about Eric and Ginger. It's a wonderful read. And with regards to the reunion gig, they went into detail about the logistics of the tours, about how they were feeling going into it, how it panned out for them personally. There was some friction in the backstage that I didn't know, and it was very enlightening. So I recommend that to anyone.
Is that the one by Harry Safaro?
Yeah, that's the one. Jack Bruce composing himself.
I have to agree with you. I've done a review on the channel and we've spoken about that book a few times. It's one of the best music biographies ever, and it talks about his development and also that British blues scene, his gear. You're right, Matt. The information on the gear, Brad, it's just phenomenal. It's everything that you would expect a biography to be when they're talking about the basses, the strings, the amps that Jack was using. So, the amount of research, it's a phenomenal book. I agree with you, Matt.
Yeah, in comparison, I also have the Geddy Lee biography, for example, and that one is awesome, but it doesn't go into as much, technical detail. And if you want to read that book in order to understand how Geddy became such a monster of a bass player, you might walk away somewhat disappointed, because he doesn't go into it as in depth as Jack does in his book.
There's a great question There's a great question, and it's just typical that Jonas Hellberg is asking this question, and it's fantastic. Any thoughts on Jack Bruce's first solo album? So, Matt, you're our guest. I have to ask you your thoughts first before I chip in with my 10 cents worth.
Yeah, it's a great album. I'm sure you expected me to say that. That is my opinion. I haven't listened to it nearly as much as I have the Cream catalog, because I have to be completely honest. While I admire Jack Bruce's musicianship in all its forms, and I have it on vinyl, and I have a pretty good collection of his solo stuff, as well as Cream on vinyl. It's I'm just not as much into jazz. When I play in my band, I do sort of get a little out there with some jazzy stuff, but I always try to keep it in the pretty much strictly in the rock ballpark. You know, I wanna install it on top of the psychedelic rock bass line that I've got going, and
Yeah.
I've just never been that captivated by the sound of piano or the more classical sounding stuff. So it's been a bit more difficult for me to get into. But I am discovering that what Jack did in that sort of style on his first album is wonderful. It's a captivating listen. Each one of those songs is unique, and it stands out. You know, Rope Ladder to the Moon, The Weird of Hermiston. There's obviously the stuff that appeals to me the most is things like Ministry of Bag, which I've actually covered on my channel, and that even got the attention of the Jack Bruce official Facebook page, which at the time was the most flattering thing I'd encountered in my YouTube journey. That was amazing.
And that's run by his daughter.
Yeah, it's run by his. It was
yeah.
really good to be in touch with them.
Look, my thoughts exactly with that album. It took me 30 years, Matt, to appreciate that album, because when you come from, Brad, a Cream, if you've been immersed in Cream and you're listening to live Cream and Cream Volume 1 and Wheels of Fire, and when you go and listen to that album, it's like, what? Wow. Yeah, it's so it's disjointed. So it took me 30 years to appreciate that album as it is, that it's just Jack Bruce, Brad.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a Cream album, Brad.
Yeah. Yeah, it took me a while to get into it, and probably for the same reasons as both you gentlemen, you know what I mean? So yeah. But you're looking back retrospectively, you do, you do seem to get more of a appreciation for it, and we've discussed this previously on other shows, Andrew, where something that came out in the past that you were like, oh, so about, you've formed you found a new appreciation for it because time has gone past and you're at a different place musically as well, and you listen back to it and you go, wow, there was a spark here that I didn't really pick up before, or there was something about this that made this intriguing. So I'm actually going to go back and have a good listen to that, because it's been many years since I've actually listened to it.
And I think you should, and we'll definitely be ranking that album on the channel, folks. And what I like about that album too, and if you listen to Jack talk about it over the years, it was an album that he needed to do. He had to do that album after Cream. It was, it was the medicine he needed. So answer to your question, Jonas, it's a masterpiece. But we're nice to know that we all share the same thoughts, because I know lots of other Cream fans too, and Jack Bruce fans, that took a long time to appreciate that album too, because obviously it's not a Cream album.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a sort of challenging confession to make as a Jack fan. because it just takes you a while to grow into it. But at the same time, it's a Jack Bruce production. It was really important to him and to his loved ones and his acquaintances in the who did the album with him. And you're sort of expected to recognize it for what it is, which is, as you said, a masterpiece. And it just doesn't come as easy to someone who starts out as a massive Cream fan. But yeah, I've been working my way there, and I gotta say that when you listen to the entire album as it is on the record, then I think that's the right way to appreciate it. You have to have the full context of the preceding track and the next track after. It flows really well. I appreciate that about it.
100%. A lot of the albums that we listen to have to be negotiated like that, Matt, and definitely. And these albums were produced with that whole context in mind, Brad. We know that, don't we? That these guys weren't just producing a solo or a hit song. The album experience was the key for a lot of these artists. That concept. Even if they weren't going to admit that what they were producing was a concept album. But there was that whole trip behind the whole album for a lot of these guys. Before we go, we're going to be winding up very, very shortly. Our friend Nelson Rodriguez has got a great question. So I'm going to get you, Matt, to answer it, then Brad, and then I'm going to chime in. Mount Rushmore has 4 faces on it, if I remember rightly, Brad, from fifth form history. Yep. So 4 bass players, your Mount Rushmore bass players, Matt. And then, Brad, I'm going to get you to answer that same question too.
I've never been one for ranking them so much. They're all important to me. But Jack Bruce, Andy Fraser, Geddy Lee, Geezer Butler would be my picks.
Well done. Brad?
John Paul Jones, Billy Cox, Jack Bruce, and I'm going to go with another Clapton one, Nathan East.
Okay. This is really hard, so I have to go with Jack Bruce. I have to go with Andy Fraser as well. I'm going to go with John Taylor, the bass player from Duran Duran. And I have to go John Paul Jones too, bro. I have to. But that's my top 4 today. If you asked us that same question tomorrow, Matt, it'll probably be somebody else, wouldn't it? But,
Exactly.
Yeah. It's always hard to answer questions like that, Nelson. It's always hard. It's a momentary thing because tomorrow, like Andrew said, you're going to be listening to something you haven't heard for a long time and go, geez, that's a good bass player. So, yeah.
Can I just tell you guys a little story that happened to me on Friday? So I'm at work and I've got this orange bass that I picked up, and it's sitting there. And one of my friends came in and said, "Oh, wow, nice bass." And I said, "Yeah, it's got it from a guy around the corner." And he said, "Oh, do you like bass?" And I said, "Yeah." So we're talking about it, and he said, "Have you checked out the bass player from ABBA?" And I said, "No, I don't know." So he pulled out his phone and he played me the isolated bass track of Dancing Queen. Now we all know we all know the song Dancing Queen, and he played, because he's a bass player, and he played the isolated track of the actual guy playing the bass, and it's just phenomenal.
Yeah. In the cover band, Andrew, we play Gimme, 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 and the middle section, the bass line and all that. So the bass player that was in ABBA was pretty outstanding, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. It just gave me a complete, as a bass player, a complete appreciation of what this guy was doing. But I'm not surprised when you think about it, because what were they doing? They were doing dance music. And so for dance music to be successful, it's got to have a beat, it's got to have the bass, and
yeah.
the bass player was just phenomenal. But just a little chat that I thought we'd throw in there. But yeah. So go and check out Dancing Queen's bass. It's pretty, because we know the song. It's a pretty cool song.
Have to check it out now.
Yeah, I think in a lot of these really, really successful, pop and dance and other very popular, music genres, you find that the bassists, what they do can be kind of subdued at most of the time, but there usually comes a moment somewhere where you just realize, oh, this guy is playing at 10% of his real capacity. He's just keeping it locked down. He's serving the song. And then there comes a moment when you realize this guy's a monster.
Yes.
He's an amazing player, and he's just keeping it on the down low to, just serve the song. And then there's one moment where he brandishes the full extent of what he can do. And that moment can be really
Pino Palladino is a classic example of that. Paul Young's "Wherever I Lay My Hat." The fretless bass intro to that song. He just goes into the studio. He's been listening to some Mozart beforehand. Here's the song, and he pinches that opening as a riff from some Mozart. And yeah. Matt, there's lots of examples. Yeah, we could be here for 5 hours talking about it.
I want to mention Black Betty by Ram Jam real quick, because that's one where I noticed this for the first time. You think it's a pretty basic song, and then it goes. I think the reason is that the most famous version of this in the music video and all that doesn't have the bass solo in it. There's a bass solo in the middle of the song that's absolutely insane. It's crazy. Yes. I can't play it. I've tried it. I can't do it. I need way more practice to be able to do that. You think that's such a friends, then you hear that and just blown the hell away.
Yeah. I had a couple of friends that were in a cover band, and they did that song. They did a good job. So Jonas has put down the name of that bass player that we were talking about. Rutger Gunnarsson was their bass player. So anyway, guys, thank you for hanging out with us and joining us with Matt. If you haven't already subscribed to his channel and our channel, we invite you to, please. If you're watching on a replay, go and subscribe to Matt's channel. And I'm sure this won't be the last time we'll have Matt here on the channel. It's been a pleasure, Matt, having you come on and spend a bit of time in the morning with us here, talking a little bit about what you've been up to, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you. And I'm sure you'll be on the channel again in the future, Matt.
The pleasure is mine, guys. It's been awesome. Good luck to your channel as well. Keep it going, guys. If I may, I would like to shout out my great friends, David and Laura from College-Shoot. And yeah, it's been nice. Thanks for having me.
No worries, Matt. Thank you very much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you, Brad, brother, for jumping on and hanging out with us, taking time out of your weekend. I always appreciate that. And we appreciate the people that have joined us live, asking some great questions. Nelson in particular, Alan, Jonas, thank you, brother, for hanging out with us for the show. We've had Steve Cooper, who joined us a little bit earlier on. He's subbed to the channel. I'll make sure later on that I go back and sub to your channel on behalf of us. The Rock Professor was here hanging out with us. If I've missed anybody else, forgive me, but we wish you well. And Brad and I will be back next week, and we're going to be doing a Jimi Hendrix show. We'll have some questions for each other. And it's going to be pretty open. It's like, why is Jimi Hendrix cool?
Yeah. Mate, that's a pretty easy question to answer straight off the bat, mate. That afro, you can't beat it.
Oh, mate. You know me. I'm taking you on a bit of a detour. So I've been on this Bob Dylan buzz for a little while, reading a little bit about Bob Dylan, And then obviously there's a connection between Bob Dylan, Brad, and Matt and Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix absolutely loved Bobby Dylan and what Bob Dylan was doing, and vice versa. These guys loved each other. And we know that because, there's a couple of songs being recorded, but just what these two guys were doing in that late 60s period, Brad and Matt, and the role that they had.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just on fire.
Yeah.
That is right. I have to say, I still haven't given Bob and his work the due attention that they deserve. That's something that's on my list for when I'm looking for new stuff to listen to. Feels
Go
crazy
and listen
calling
to Blonde on Blonde. Go and listen to Blonde on Blonde. Whatever you do.
Will do. I mean, so far my
Yeah.
favorite Bob Dylan piece has been the Simon and Garfunkel version of "The Times Are Changing." That's about as close as I've come to it. And of course, All Along the Tower.
We can do better than that. Good on you, though. We're going to go, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you, Simon, the Rock Professor. Said, cool show. Take care. It's always good when we get a pass mark from the Rock Professor, isn't it, Brad?
Yeah, we don't get sent to the naughty corner. Yes.
All right. We're going to end the show, Matt. Please don't leave till don't leave. Don't leave yet. I'm going to play the video and we're going to end the show, but please hang around to the end. Is that okay? Thank you, Matt. Bye, folks. We'll see you next week.
See you guys.
See you guys. Take care.